Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Friday morning to you. Welcome back to my morning musings here on Now TV. Now, in case you didn't know, I produce videos on YouTube about 5 days a week. Sometimes I even stretch that. But nonetheless, I want you to take advantage of the fact that on Mondays through Thursdays, I produce videos right now, and normally on Fridays, in addition to Now TV, I also produce a series, if you please, and I call it my Responding to the Critics. And on Fridays, in my morning musings, I examine, I review books, articles, videos of individuals who attack, for lack of better terminology, who attack the full preterist view, claiming that it's heresy. Now, I want you to be watching in the very near future because I'm going to be reviewing Steve Gregg, very popular radio host, a man with whom I had a formal public debate in Denver, Colorado a few years ago. That formal public debate is available for purchase on my website, donkpreston.com or bibleprophecy.com. Very cordial debate, very profitable. And Steve Gregg has just come out with a brand new book on preterism. Why not full preterism, or something similar to that? And so you'll be wanting to watch for my response to Steve's book in the very near future. And it promises to be an interesting book because during that debate, Steve Gregg made some absolutely astounding admissions. And then he made some really, for lack of better terminology, I will call it, and it's a non-Latin term that I've coined, and it's argumentum ad desperatum. No, it's not actual Latin at all. But what I mean by that is when someone's traditional views are called into very serious question, and in response they make an argument that virtually no one in history has ever made, then I call that argumentum ad desperatum. It's an argument from desperation. And so again, you need to be looking for that on my Friday morning musings, again, which I sometimes label Responding to the Critics. I'll most assuredly be labeling that new series. So in the meantime, well, here we are in April the 4th. I'm actually filming this on March the 16th. As I film this, we have been witnessing for well over a week now the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Our hearts go out in sadness to the people of Ukraine. Now, mind you, I don't believe that Zelensky is one of the great paragons of virtue as far as leaders are concerned. I think there's a whole lot that can be called into question as to his moral standing. But nonetheless, the very idea that Russia has invaded the Ukraine and is raining down bombs and missiles on the citizens, hospitals, maternity wards, citizens in caravans that are not military. I mean, it's just astounding to conceive of such horror and such suffering. And of course, ensuing upon that invasion, we have been reading and hearing, and by the way, on my YouTube channel, I have produced 2 videos now on the Ukrainian invasion, asking the question, is this the beginning of Gog and Magog, as many so-called prophecy experts tell us it is? And is Bible prophecy being fulfilled before our very eyes? I have here on my desk an article written by a fellow by the name of Looper. And he calls attention to the fact that Pat Robertson has just come out of retirement to tell his audience, this is it, ladies and gentlemen. This is the beginning of the end. He assures us, however, that the invasion of Ukraine is not Putin's main target. He tells us that this is only the beginning, that once he gets Ukraine under his control, that what comes next in a confederation of other countries, he's going to invade Israel, we are assured. And Mr. Looper does a really good job of pointing out just some of the past failed predictions of Pat Robertson. Well, this is the point, ladies and gentlemen, that I have been sharing with you for over 2 years now, here on Now TV. And that is the challenge of Christ. We have had over and over and over again one prophecy pundit after another looking at world events and telling us with all assurance, the Iraqi invasion, an absolute proof positive that the end was coming soon, that this is the last generation. One failed prediction after another by the dispensational camp, and people seem not to pay any attention to it, even though their failed predictions prove they are false prophets. Let me encourage you to go to my YouTube channel and look up my video, Are We Seeing Prophecy, or Is Prophecy Being Fulfilled Before Our Very Eyes? Here's the bottom line. Jesus' apostles in the first century, 2,000 years ago, said the end was near, coming soon, quickly, and shortly. Now, either they were right, which automatically means Pat Robertson, Tim LaHaye, and all of the modern-day prophecy pundits are wrong, or the modern-day prophecy pundits are right, but that would mean the New Testament writers are wrong. And if the New Testament writers are wrong, ladies and gentlemen, we might as well take our Bibles, chunk them in the trash, and go fishing. Because Jesus is not the Son of God if his predictions failed. The Bible is not inspired if the predictions of Jesus' apostles, writing under inspiration of the Holy Spirit, as I firmly believe, they said the end was near 2,000 years ago. And in my video from this week, I demonstrate that without any shadow of a doubt. Do yourself a favor. Watch that video. And then I've got to share with you the foundation of everything that I've been doing here on Now TV and our examination of the challenge of Christ. I've shared with you how atheists, Muslims, Jews, skeptics use the failed predictions of modern-day prophets to, quote, prove that Jesus is not the Son of God. Well, guess what? On my YouTube channel just this morning, okay, now remember, I am making this video on March the 16th. Just this morning, an individual posted that his niece, who's been in college, been hearing all of the anti-Christian rhetoric, has been watching all of these so-called prophecy experts talk about this is the end, this is the end, this is the end, and every one of them fails. And this individual shared that his niece had just posted on Facebook and YouTube, she is now an atheist because of the failed predictions of these, quote, prophecy experts. Ladies and gentlemen, if that doesn't break your heart, it should. And again, it's the very reason why I have been sharing with you for over 2 years now why it is important, why it's critical that the church be able to meet the challenge of Christ and be able to hold these so-called prophecy experts accountable. We need more ministers. We need more preachers. We need more people in the pews speaking up when their preachers get up and proclaim, oh, well, look what's happening with Russia. Look what is happening with China. Look what is happening with Israel. And challenge their teaching. And show the people who listen to them, this is not right. We are not in the last days, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, if you want assistance, if you want ammunition, if you please, to prove that we're not in the last days, go to my website, donkpreston.com or BibleProphecy.com. Go to my store and order a copy of The Last Days Identified. The book is inexpensive, but I want to tell you, it is chock full of biblical documentation to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt, ladies and gentlemen, there's no question. We are not in the last days. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it means if we are not in the last days, then the Russian invasion of the Ukraine means nothing prophetically. Now look, that doesn't mean it's not important. That doesn't mean it's not a threat to world peace. It just simply means it is not a part of prophecy. And it means, oh, this is so cool. It means we're not waiting for the man of sin. Oh, you know what? It means that Putin is not the man of sin. We're not waiting on Armageddon. We're not waiting for the end of the Christian age. That's what all of this means if, or I would actually say, since we are not in the last days. I want to tell you, this book has transformed the lives of countless numbers of individuals who have lived in fear all of their lives because they were convinced we are standing on the precipice. We're standing on the very edge of the end of the world. And after reading this book, they realized there are lots of troubles in this world. And I'm not trying to negate that, as I said. But we are not in the biblical last days. The biblical last days ended in AD 70 with the judgment of Old Covenant Israel and the end of her covenant existence. So important. So critically important. Now, last week, I introduced for you the concept because remember, we have not only been looking at the challenge of Christ from the perspective, Christ predicted his coming in judgment with the angels in flaming fire and the reward of every man in the first century generation. Matthew 16, 27 and 28. Atheists, Jews, and agnostics and skeptics tell us, well, it obviously didn't happen. And listen to me. Christian ministers deny it. Do you catch the power of that? Just this morning, I've been reading comments by quote, Christian ministers who absolutely deny that Christ came in the first century. Calling me a heretic for believing that. Calling me a false teacher for affirming that Jesus kept his word. Is there not some really dark, bitter irony here? I am the one affirming that Jesus and his apostles kept their word. And for doing that, I'm called a heretic and a false teacher. Something is wrong here, ladies and gentlemen. Something is radically, dramatically, tragically wrong when those who say Jesus kept his word are called the enemies of the truth. Well, I must move on. So, we have examined the challenge of Christ from the perspective of the promise of Christ to come in the first century. But then we've segued from that to the promise of Jesus to establish the kingdom in the first century. Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, we have to understand that the coming of Christ in his kingdom and the coming of Christ in judgment are synchronous, i.e., same time events. So when the dispensationalists say, oh, Jesus didn't come in the first century, we already know that they say Christ did not establish the kingdom. Now, I'm going to say something, and I'm going to pose a question. I mean absolutely no offense. Okay? So please accept the question in the spirit in which I intend it, a spirit of humility, a spirit even of grace, but a question that needs to be asked. If the atheist says Jesus didn't keep his word, and a dispensationalist or any other branch of the futurist eschatology, any minister says Jesus didn't keep his word, what is the practical, logical difference between the atheist and the Christian who denies that Jesus kept his word? Now, please, I hope you won't be offended by that question, because once again, I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm not trying to be critical. I'm not trying to be ugly. Because you see, I know without a doubt whatsoever, I know this, that there are millions of people who call themselves Christians. They genuinely love the Lord. They genuinely love the Lord's word. They believe sincerely that as a dispensationalist that they are believing the truth. I understand that, and I sympathize with that. Listen, I was raised as a fifth-generation amillennialist. I was sincere in that. I loved the Lord as an amillennialist. I believed that I was believing and teaching the truth as an amillennialist. But I discovered I was wrong. But my belief as an amillennialist did not make me an evil person, did not make me a wicked person, did not make me a, quote, false teacher in the way that term is used in Scripture. You see, a false teacher, biblically speaking, is someone who ostensibly, purposely teaches what he knows to be false. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I didn't believe I was false. I would say that 99.9% of all dispensationalists have no idea that what they're saying is wrong. They hold those views sincerely, lovingly, with dedication to the Lord. That doesn't mean that it's right. And so, boy, I'm running out of time so quickly. We have looked at the view that not only do the atheists, skeptics, agnostics, etc., deny that Jesus came, dispensationalists deny that Jesus established the kingdom. In order to justify that view, they insert a gap of so far 2,000 years between the 69th and the 70th week of Daniel. Now, I've spent a good long while showing to you and sharing with you 10 charts on why there is no gap. But we have come down to chart number 10, and we've got several points, each of which is worthy of a chart within itself, okay, to demonstrate further. If there is a gap between the 69th and the 70th week of Daniel chapter 9, that has implications. Implications that we flat do not see or hear any dispensationalist dealing with. Period. And by the way, let me make this announcement. We're not ready to release it yet. But as of last week, I finished producing a 22, it's either 22 or 23, to be honest about it, I don't remember, DVD series on Daniel 9, 24 to 27. In that series, I have three special videos dedicated to the question, is there a gap of so far 2,000 years between the 69th and the 70th week of Daniel? Now, I've abbreviated our discussion that I've been sharing with you here on Now TV and made it a little more concise and hopefully easier to understand in a shorter period of time instead of me stretching it out over, several months here. But I'm not aware of anyone else. I'm not aware of another study on Daniel 9, 24 to 27 that is available anywhere. And the DVDs are going to be available, or the entire study will be available on flash drive. It will even be available for download on my website, donkpreston.com, BibleProphecy.com. Now, I just sent the finished work to my webmaster. He's got a lot of work to do to render the video, to make it. I don't know how it's done, okay? I have no clue. But to put it on flash drives, to condense even perhaps the videos and put more than one video on a DVD. I don't know how that's done. It's way, way, way beyond me. But when that's available, I'll be announcing it. We're going to make this entire video package as affordable as possible. But this has been a massive undertaking. Okay? A massive undertaking of 23 videos, each of which is anywhere from 40 to 50 minutes long. So as you can see, that's a lot of material. A lot of material. So be watching for that. It truly is an unprecedented work that I think is going to bring a lot of clarity to the Christian community. And I believe will go a long, long way in determining when the 70 weeks of Daniel were, not will be, but were fulfilled, and that time, that point of terminus of the 70 weeks was in AD 70. Now, I'm almost out of time this morning, but last week I introduced for you another question, another gap question, that in which I stated, if there is a gap of so far 2,000 years between the 69th and the 70th week of Daniel chapter 9, verse 24, then that means, ladies and gentlemen, that Israel's feast days are not fulfilled. Now, why do I say that? Well, it is because Israel's feast days serve as the underlying foundational source for Daniel chapter 9. Daniel 9 talks about the sacrifice of Messiah. Daniel 9:26. Guess what? That's Passover. And it talks about the making of the atonement. That's Yom Kippur. And it talks about the bringing in of everlasting righteousness. Guess what? That's Sukkot. And it talks about the time of the judgment, the overwhelming flood of judgment, of the destruction of Jerusalem. That's Rosh Hashanah. So, once again, the feast days serve as the source, the fountain, from which Daniel 9 flows. And thus, if Daniel chapter 9, 24 to 27, are not fulfilled, that means that Israel's feast days are not fulfilled. But wait a minute. If Israel's feast days have not been fulfilled, then guess what, ladies and gentlemen? The law of Moses remains in effect. Every jot, every tittle remains binding and effective and imposed. Jesus said, "Do not think that I am come to destroy the law of the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill, to bring it to pass." That's the meaning of the Greek word genetai. "For verily I say unto you, not one jot, not one tittle shall pass from the law," and technically that's the law and the prophets, "until it is all," not some of it, not a little bit of it, not parts of it, but until it is all fulfilled. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's make no mistake. The feast days with their sacrifices is an integral, foundational part of the law of Moses. Thus, until Daniel 9 is fulfilled, the feast days are in effect. I'll see you next week.